The Galactic Empire stretched across more than 1,000 star systems. For centuries, it had crushed rebellions, absorbed smaller species, and expanded its rule with pride. Its fleets were unmatched, its armies endless, and its leaders certain that nothing could challenge their dominance. To the citizens of the Empire, it felt as if their power would last forever. On the edge of this great empire, near the border systems where stars grew faint and quiet, an unusual signal appeared. At first, the deep-range sensors believed it was noise, just a random burst from a dying star. But the patterns repeated. The signal was structured. It carried meaning. The news quickly reached the high command. Whenever a new signal was found, it usually meant another species had been discovered, one more culture waiting to be brought under the Empire's control. The general smiled, expecting an easy victory. The Empire dispatched one of its proudest ships, the Eternal Spear, a scouting cruiser with a long record of success. Its captain, Lord Admiral Zadran, had personally overseen the surrender of 3 different civilizations. He viewed this new assignment as another chance to prove the Empire's unstoppable reach. When the Eternal Spear entered the sector, the crew immediately noticed something strange. Instead of the usual signs of life, stations, trade ships, or colonies, they found drifting debris. Huge chunks of metal, some still glowing faintly from heat, floated silently in the dark. Scars ran across the hulls as if the ships had been torn apart by claws rather than weapons. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. These were not Imperial ships. They carried markings unknown to the Empire. Someone had fought here, and someone had lost. Admiral Zadran ordered scans. Among the wreckage, the computers detected an automated beacon still active, powered by a small fusion core. When they translated its signal, a single line of text appeared across every Imperial screen. "If you can read this, run." For a long moment, the command deck was silent. Then laughter erupted. The officers found the message amusing. To them, it sounded like the desperate cry of a primitive race that had stumbled into trouble far beyond their understanding. Zadran himself smirked. "Who dares send warnings to the Empire? If they survived, they will kneel. If they did not, then their fear is wasted breath." Yet not all on the Eternal Spear shared his certainty. Among the younger officers, whispers spread. The wreckage was massive, larger than most known fleets. The destruction looked unnatural, as if the ships had been pulled apart by forces unknown. Still, the mission was clear. The Empire did not turn back. As the Eternal Spear moved deeper into the sector, they detected another vessel. This one was not destroyed. It was small, only a fraction of the cruiser's size, but alive. Its engines flickered with damage, its hull marked with burns and scars. Yet against all odds, it still traveled forward. When Imperial scanners locked onto the ship, the vessel broadcast a signal. Not of surrender, not of fear, but of warning. A human face appeared on the screen, weary but calm. His uniform was torn, his hair unkempt, yet his eyes were steady. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. His voice was tired but not broken. "This is not your war. Leave while you can." The bridge of the Eternal Spear erupted in disbelief. A single damaged ship dared to speak to the Empire this way. The officers expected begging, pleading, perhaps even an offer of service. Instead, they were told to turn back. Admiral Zadran's pride burned at the insult. "You speak to the Empire," he declared coldly. "You will identify your species, surrender your vessel, and submit to Imperial rule. Resistance will bring your end." The human only shook his head. There was no anger in his eyes, only a deep sadness. "You don't understand. We've been running for a long time, and if you're here, it's already too late." The transmission ended. The Eternal Spear wasted no time. Zadran ordered pursuit. The small human vessel turned and entered a dense asteroid field, its engines flaring with sudden strength. Imperial gunners locked weapons, but the target danced between rocks with impossible precision. Every missile missed. Every laser hit stone instead of metal. The officers grew restless. How could such a fragile ship evade them? Zadran clenched his fists but refused to admit defeat. Hours passed. The human vessel vanished into the shadows of the asteroids, leaving only silence behind. But silence did not last long. The Eternal Spear's long-range sensors began to detect faint signals. More wreckage. More beacons, each repeating the same line in dozens of languages. "If you can read this, run." The words repeated across the screens, echoing like a ghostly chorus. Some officers shifted uncomfortably. The young lieutenant at the comms station whispered, "Admiral, perhaps we should return with this information. The High Command must be warned." Zadran turned sharply, his voice filled with steel. "The Empire does not run. The Empire does not fear. Whoever these humans are, whatever enemies they claim to face, they will learn the truth, our truth. Nothing stands against us." But in the depths of his own mind, Zadran felt a sliver of unease. The human's eyes filled not with defiance but with sorrow, haunted him. It was not the look of someone boasting. It was the look of someone who had already seen too much. The Admiral dismissed the thought, ordering the fleet to continue their mission. Yet as the stars outside shifted and the beacon's warnings repeated endlessly, a sense of dread began to settle over the crew. They had come expecting another easy conquest. Instead, they found ruins, warnings, and a species that did not tremble before them. And though they did not admit it aloud, many aboard the Eternal Spear wondered if the message was not only for humans, but for them as well, to be continued. The Eternal Spear returned to Imperial space carrying the strange report. The officers spoke of wreckage fields, beacons, and the mysterious vessel that had escaped into the asteroid belt. But most of all, they spoke of the humans, an unfamiliar species that had dared to warn the Empire to run. At first, High Command dismissed the report. Many believed it was a story exaggerated by frightened officers. But as more patrols entered the border systems, the same results came back: wreckage, signals repeating the same message, and fleeting glimpses of human vessels that never stayed long enough to be captured. The mystery deepened. The Emperor himself demanded answers. He ordered a larger fleet to investigate. No longer just a scouting mission, this was now a matter of imperial pride. The Empire could not allow rumors of weakness to spread. And so, a fleet of 10 warships set out under Admiral Zadran's command. The Admiral felt the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. He had laughed at the humans' warning before, but secretly the doubt had never left him. The fleet arrived at the same coordinates where the Eternal Spear had once pursued the small human vessel. As expected, the beacons were still there. Their mechanical voices whispered across space, echoing endlessly, "If you can read this, run." The words spread across the comms of all 10 ships, their voices cold and steady. "Destroy them," Zadran ordered. Beams of plasma and heavy torpedoes tore through the wreckage and the beacons. The warnings finally fell silent, reduced to dust and ash. The crews cheered at the show of power, their confidence restored. But the silence that followed felt heavier than before. 2 days later, the humans returned. The first sighting was a single ship, small like the one before, gliding silently along the edge of the fleet's scanners. Then another appeared, and another. Each one scarred, each one damaged, but none destroyed. The officers stared at the growing number of signals. "Admiral, they are surrounding us." The human vessels did not fire. They did not even approach. Instead, they sent a single transmission to every ship in the fleet. A woman appeared on the screen this time. Her face was pale, her uniform patched together from scraps, but her gaze was steady. "You were warned," she said simply. Zadran's jaw tightened. "Identify yourself and your species." The woman tilted her head. "We are called humans, and if you value survival, you will turn around. This place is not safe for you." The bridge erupted in outrage. Officers shouted, demanding that the humans be captured. The idea that anyone could tell the Empire where it could or could not go was unthinkable. Zadran raised his hand for silence. "You speak boldly, human, yet your ships are broken. Your fleet is nothing compared to ours. You think you can threaten the Empire?" The woman's eyes softened as if pitying him. "It is not us you should fear. We run because we must. If you stay here, you will see why." The transmission ended. Zadran clenched his fists. His pride screamed for action. Yet part of him remembered the look in her eyes, sad, not boastful. He ordered the fleet to prepare for engagement. "Target the nearest human vessel. Disable it if possible. I will have answers." The fleet's cannons roared to life. A storm of plasma bolts streaked across the void. The nearest human ship moved. To the officer's shock, it weaved through the fire with precision no damaged vessel should possess. The ship's engines flared and it darted into the asteroid belt, vanishing once again among the rocks. "Cowards," one officer spat. But others looked pale. Their sensors had tracked the maneuver. The human ship had moved in ways that should have been impossible for a craft its size. It was as if the pilot had danced between the fire, knowing exactly where each shot would land before it was fired. Hours turned into days. Every time the Imperial fleet advanced, human ships appeared. They never attacked directly. They only showed themselves long enough to repeat their warning and then disappeared again. Whispers began to spread among the crews. Some believed the humans were ghosts. Others believed they were messengers of something greater. The words, "If you can read this," run echoed through their minds even when the beacons were gone. Zadran refused to let fear take root. He reminded his men of the Empire's strength. "We are the blade that cuts through the stars. We do not bend. We do not run." But even as he spoke, the Admiral felt the weight of his own words. The humans did not act like rebels or enemies. They acted like survivors. Survivors of something the Empire had not yet seen. On the fourth day, everything changed. The fleet detected a massive energy surge from deep within the asteroid field. At first, they thought it was a human ambush. The ships formed into battle formation, weapons primed. Then the sensors screamed. The surge was not from human technology. It was something far larger. Something ancient. A shape emerged from the shadows. A vessel so vast it dwarfed even the Imperial flagships. Its hull was jagged, alive with shifting patterns that made no sense. It seemed less like a machine and more like a living shadow, moving with unnatural grace. The officers froze. None had ever seen anything like it. It is not on any record, whispered the science officer. This is not human. Before anyone could act, the human ships reappeared, swarming between the Imperial fleet and the massive shadow. Their leader, the same woman as before, appeared once more on the screens. "Now you see," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried centuries of exhaustion. "This is why we run." The shadow ship stirred. Without firing a single visible weapon, one of the Imperial cruisers was torn in half. No explosion, no warning, just silence as the ship drifted apart, lifeless. Panic spread across the fleet. Officers shouted, alarms blared, and Zadran felt the ground shift beneath him. For the first time in his career, the Admiral did not know what order to give. The humans moved quickly, forming a screen between the Empire and the monster. Their small ships darted and flared, distracting the shadow with desperate maneuvers. The woman's voice cut through the chaos. "If you want to live, follow us, run." Zadran's pride roared against the idea. The Empire did not flee. But as he looked at the wreckage of the destroyed cruiser, at the terror in the eyes of his officers, and at the humans who fought not for conquest but for survival, he felt the weight of choice. The Empire had always believed itself unstoppable. Yet here, on the edge of known space, they had found something greater, something that even humans, fragile and scarred, had survived only by running. The Admiral took a deep breath. For the first time, he whispered the words he had once mocked. "Run." And the Imperial fleet followed the humans into the asteroid field, pursued by the shadow of something they could not yet understand. To be continued. The asteroid field swallowed the Imperial fleet like a maze of stone. Massive rocks drifted silently, some the size of cities, others no larger than shuttles. Dust and fragments filled the air, clouding the scanners. It was a dangerous place to hide, but it was better than facing the monster that had destroyed a cruiser with a single breathless motion. The humans guided the way. Their small damaged ships moved with uncanny precision, weaving between the asteroids as though they had traveled these paths 1,000 times. The Imperial warships followed clumsily, their heavy hulls scraping close to stone, their crews sweating at the thought of crashing. Admiral Zadran stood at the center of the bridge of the Eternal Spear, his eyes locked on the main screen. Behind them, far in the distance, sensors flickered with the presence of the shadow ship. It did not rush. It drifted, patient as though it knew there was nowhere to run. "Admiral," said the comms officer, his voice trembling, "the humans are signaling again." "Put them through," Zadran ordered. The screen lit up with the face of the same woman who had warned them before. Her uniform was worn, her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes carried determination. "You see it now," she said softly. "The thing that hunts us. We call it the Hollow." Zadran frowned. "What is it?" "Some kind of weapon, some empire we have not yet met." The woman shook her head. "It is not an empire. It is not alive the way we are. It is hunger. It devours. Entire worlds vanish when it comes. We have run from it for generations, carrying what little we could save. And now you stand in its path." The bridge fell silent. Officers who once laughed at the humans' warnings now stared at the screen with pale faces. Zedran's pride wanted to reject her words. The Empire was strong. The Empire did not fear, but the sight of the destroyed cruiser burned in his memory. One instant it had lived. The next it was gone. No weapon, no warning, just silence. And the hollow still followed. The fleet drifted deeper into the asteroid field. Days passed with no rest. The humans shared coordinates and routes, keeping the massive Imperial ships from colliding with drifting rocks. Slowly, suspicion turned to uneasy cooperation. One evening, if such a word could exist in the endless dark of space, Zedran found himself staring at a private transmission from the human commander. "My name is Captain Arya," the woman finally said. "We never introduced ourselves properly." "Admiral Zedran," he replied. His voice carried steel, but there was also curiosity. "Why help us?" "You could have left us to die," Arya sighed. "Because we were once like you, proud, unbroken. We thought we could fight the hollow. But pride is useless against something that cannot be destroyed. We lost everything. Now we survive so others may not share our fate." Zedran studied her face. There was no mockery in her tone, only truth. He wanted to argue, to say the Empire was different, that they had strength unmatched by any other race. But the words felt hollow in his throat. Meanwhile, among the Imperial crews, whispers spread. The hollow became a ghostly presence in their minds. Officers spoke of nightmares where the shadow swallowed entire fleets. Soldiers who once believed the Empire unstoppable now asked quiet questions. What if the humans were right? What if there are things even the Empire cannot defeat? The Empire had built itself on certainty. Now doubt grew like cracks in glass. On the 6th day in the asteroid field, the hollow drew closer. Its vast shape loomed at the edge of sensors, its presence heavy and suffocating. Even without weapons firing, the crews felt its approach in their bones. Panic threatened to rise then. Suddenly, the humans took action. Their small ships darted out of hiding, attacking not the hollow but the asteroids themselves. Explosions rocked the field, sending massive stones tumbling into new paths. The rocks collided, shattering into fragments that spread like waves. The hollow slowed. The field shifted around it, trapping it in a maze of drifting stone. For the first time, the monster's advance paused. On the Eternal Spear, the crew erupted in cheers, but Arya's voice cut through the celebration. "Do not mistake this for victory. We have only bought time." That night, if night could exist among stars, Zedran stood alone on the bridge. He thought of his empire, of the emperor on his golden throne, of the endless armies, of the belief that nothing could stand against them, and he thought of the humans. Broken, wandering, yet alive. They had faced this enemy for centuries, while the Empire had only just seen it. Perhaps, Zedran thought, survival was a greater strength than conquest, but he kept such thoughts to himself. The next day, Imperial scholars aboard the fleet began to dig into ancient archives. They searched records of old encounters, myths from the early days of exploration, forgotten fragments stored in dusty data libraries. What they found chilled them, scattered across history. Across different species absorbed into the Empire, there were whispers of a darkness that consumed, a shadow that erased worlds. Civilizations had spoken of it, then vanished. The hollow had been here before, and humanity, against all odds, had lived. When the scholars presented their findings, silence filled the command chamber. Zedran's officers looked to him for orders. For the first time, they saw not a commander of unshakable pride, but a man deep in thought. "Admiral," one officer said quietly, "if what the humans say is true, then the Empire itself is in danger." Zedran did not answer at once. He stared at the stars beyond the screen, at the faint shadow still moving behind the asteroids. Finally, he spoke. "If it is true, then the Empire must change. We cannot fight this alone." The words tasted bitter, but they were honest. That evening, Arya sent another message. Her face appeared once more, her eyes tired but sharp. "You have seen enough," she said. "Now you understand. We do not fight the hollow. We endure, we move, and we warn others when we can. That is how we have survived." Zedran leaned forward. "And how long do you think you can keep running?" Arya's lips curved into a sad smile. "As long as it takes." The connection ended. Among the Empire's fleet, the mood shifted. The laughter that once mocked human warnings was gone. Now there was respect, even if grudging. The humans were not cowards. They were not weak. They were survivors of something no empire had faced and lived to tell. The hollow still lingered, pressing against the edge of the asteroid field, patient as ever. But for the first time, the empire no longer saw the humans as prey. They saw them as the keepers of a secret too terrible to ignore. On the 7th day, the Imperial fleet gathered in formation. Zadran addressed them all. His voice carried across the comms, firm and steady. We came here seeking conquest. We found something greater, something that humbles even the Empire. The humans are not our enemies. They are our guides. For now, we follow them. For now, we endure. But one day, the Empire will rise again, not as conquerors, but as defenders. The crews listened, silent but attentive. In their hearts, many felt fear. But alongside it was a new kind of strength, the strength of knowing they were not alone. As the fleet prepared to move deeper into uncharted space, following the humans' path of survival, the beacons echoed once more in their minds. Not from machines this time, but from memory. If you can read this, run. The Empire, for the first time in its long history, obeyed. To be continued. The Imperial fleet followed the humans through the asteroid field, their massive hulls scraping dangerously close to drifting rocks. The humans' small ships darted like sparks, leading them through narrow passes and twisting corridors of stone. Every move was calculated, precise. Every risk was measured. For Admiral Zadran, this was a humbling experience. His pride, once unshakable, was tempered by awe. The humans had survived encounters no empire could imagine. They had endured centuries of running, of hiding, of facing threats that left worlds in ruin. And yet here they were, still moving, still alive. Days passed. The fleet grew weary. Supplies ran low. Even the humans, though experienced, showed signs of exhaustion. Yet they pressed on. Finally, the fleet reached a wide region of space untouched by the hollow. Here the asteroids were sparse, the paths clear. The human ships gathered in a large formation, battered but unbroken. Millions of lives now followed in their wake, families, refugees, and survivors who had endured countless dangers. Zadran's officers stared at the scene. Never in history had the Empire seen anything like this. A small, scarred fleet carrying not ships of war but the fragile remains of an entire species. One of his younger officers whispered, "They are not asking for help. They are asking for passage, and yet they are leading us." Zadran knew it was true. Captain Arya's face appeared on the main screen once more. She looked tired, her uniform patched with multiple repairs, but her voice was calm and firm. "You have followed us this far," she said. "Now you must make a choice. We do not ask for alliance. We do not seek your empire's power. We offer only survival." Zadran straightened. "Survival. For the Empire?" Arya shook her head. "For yourselves. The Hollow does not care about power. It does not care about conquest or glory. It destroys everything in its path. If you stay here, you will be consumed. Follow us or face it alone." Silence filled the fleet. Officers glanced at each other, uncertain. Many had never questioned their emperor's orders, their duty, their strength. Now they were asked to follow a species they had once considered inferior, humans, and yet the evidence was clear. The Hollow had already destroyed one of their cruisers. It would not stop. The fleet's science officer, a thin man with sharp eyes, spoke up. "Admiral, I've cross-referenced historical records with the humans' reports. Every mention of the Hollow lines up with species that vanished centuries ago. They could be right. We are in danger." Zadran nodded slowly. He did not like admitting fear, but admitting danger was not weakness, it was strategy, and survival was the first rule of strategy. "Very well," he said. "We follow the humans, but I want formations, defenses, and readiness. If this Hollow attacks, we fight together." Arya's eyes softened slightly. "You are wise to do so. But understand, fighting it directly is not possible. You can only endure. You can only survive." Over the next several days, the humans led the Empire along hidden paths, navigating through asteroid fields, debris clouds, and warped regions of space where sensors struggled. Every move was calculated to avoid detection by the Hollow. Every course correction was meant to buy time. Imperial officers watched with growing respect. The humans were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They did not rely on firepower. They relied on knowledge, experience, and survival instincts honed over generations. Zadran began to understand. Their survival was not luck. It was skill, patience, and an unbreakable will. One evening, during a brief lull in travel, Zadran requested a private meeting with Arya. Their screens connected directly, away from the noise of the fleet. "Captain," he began, "I have led fleets across hundreds of systems. I have conquered species, subdued planets, and crushed rebellion. But I have never seen a people like yours. You survive against impossible odds, yet you do not fight for empire. You fight only to live." Arya nodded, her expression unreadable. "We have learned that survival is not about power. It is about endurance. It is about protecting what is precious, even if that means running." Zadran's pride bristled. "Running? It is not a concept for the Empire." Arya smiled faintly. "Sometimes running is the only way to fight another day. Sometimes it is the bravest choice." The Admiral was silent. He thought of the destroyed cruiser, of the Hollow, of the humans' warning. Pride meant nothing against this force. Survival meant everything. The next day, the fleet approached a region of space where the Hollow had been spotted before. Its presence was heavy, almost tangible, even from light years away. Imperial sensors detected distortion in space itself. Ships quivered under the pressure. The humans immediately formed a protective screen around the Imperial ships. They moved like shadows, weaving between the fleet, keeping the monster at bay. Every move was precise, every decision deliberate. Zadran watched, fascinated. He had commanded fleets for decades, yet he had never seen such skill. The humans were not soldiers, they were survivors, and their skill was unmatched. Then it happened. The Hollow appeared, its massive shape rolling through space like a living storm. It emitted no sound, no energy beam, yet its presence alone shredded sensors and disrupted communications. Imperial ships trembled under the invisible pressure. The humans held the line. Their small ships darted forward, creating diversions, forcing the Hollow to change course, slowing its advance. It was a battle of survival, not power. Every second they bought was precious. Zadran's fleet moved carefully, following their lead. Imperial soldiers who once believed they were invincible now clung to life, relying on the humans to guide them. Hours passed. Ships drifted through danger, human and Imperial alike. The Hollow followed, relentless, patient, and yet it was not invincible. The humans knew its patterns, its weaknesses, and they used that knowledge to survive. Finally, as night fell over the stars, if night could exist in the void, the Hollow retreated, fading into the distance. The fleet had survived. Zadran exhaled deeply. He looked at the humans, at Arya's weary but determined face. For the first time, he truly understood the meaning of endurance. "You have saved us," he said quietly. "Not by strength, not by empire, but by knowledge, skill, and will. I am grateful." Arya shook her head. "We did not save you. We only gave you a choice. Survival is yours to earn. Remember that." That night, the Imperial officers gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. The young soldiers who had once mocked the humans now spoke in reverence. Their pride in the Empire remained, but it was tempered by respect for a species that had faced annihilation countless times and survived. Zadran remained in his quarters, thinking. He realized that the humans' way of life, their determination, their understanding of survival, was something the Empire had never learned. Perhaps that was why they had lasted when so many others had fallen. For the first time, the Admiral allowed himself to hope, not for conquest, not for glory, but for the chance to survive. The next morning, the fleet prepared to move again. The Hollow had not vanished entirely. It lingered at the edge of known space, always hunting, always waiting. But now the humans led the way. The Imperial ships followed, and though Zadran did not say it aloud, he knew this was only the beginning. The humans had shown them a new kind of strength. The strength to endure, to survive, and to fight when the time was right. The Empire had a choice. And this time it would follow humanity's lead, to be continued. The Imperial fleet, now fully behind the humans, moved cautiously through the dark reaches of space. Every ship was alert, every sensor active. The Hollow lingered at the edge of their sensors, a massive shadow that seemed to stretch across the stars. Its presence alone made even the most seasoned officers uneasy. Admiral Zadran stood on the bridge of the Eternal Spear, watching the movement of the human ships. Captain Arya's fleet led the way, small but precise, guiding the massive Imperial warships through narrow passages and debris fields. Every step was calculated, every maneuver deliberate. For the first time, Zadran realized that survival did not depend on power alone. It depended on knowledge, experience, and the courage to endure. The humans embodied all three. "Admiral," a young officer whispered, "we've never faced anything like this."
The hollow.
"It is beyond anything in our records." Zadran nodded, though his mind was focused elsewhere. He remembered the beacon's warning from the first encounter. "If you can read this, run." Those words echoed through his mind, no longer just a warning, they were a prophecy. The humans had tried to warn them, and now the moment of truth had arrived. As they entered a wide-open sector, the hollow moved toward them, its massive shape undulating through space like a living storm. It emitted no sound, no weapon fire, but its presence crushed sensors and interfered with communications. Imperial ships groaned under invisible pressure, their hulls trembling with the sheer force of its presence. Captain Arya's voice cut through the comms. "Hold formation. Follow our lead. Do not panic. The hollow moves to destroy, but we know its patterns. Stay calm and survive." Zadran swallowed his pride and nodded. "All ships follow human formation. Defensive protocols active. Brace for movement." The humans acted quickly. Small vessels darted between asteroids and debris, creating obstacles for the hollow. Large rocks were nudged into new paths. Explosions and controlled collisions sent massive fragments flying. Every move was a distraction, designed to slow the massive shadow. Imperial ships moved with care, heavy and less agile than the humans. They relied on the smaller fleet to guide them, keeping just enough distance to avoid collisions yet close enough to remain protected. Zadran realized the humans were not fighting the hollow in a traditional sense. They were surviving, buying time, creating openings, and using strategy instead of sheer firepower. Hours passed. The hollow remained relentless, shifting its massive form, its shadow stretching across space. Imperial crews watched in awe as human ships darted in and out of danger, always one step ahead, guiding their massive fleet through impossible paths. At one point, an Imperial cruiser began to falter. Its engines failed temporarily under the strain of evasive maneuvers. Panic rose among its crew, but human ships immediately moved in. With precise maneuvers, they nudged debris to block the hollow, creating a path that allowed the cruiser to regain speed. Zadran clenched his fists. He had seen many battles, but never had he seen such courage and skill combined with sheer endurance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the hollow paused. Its massive form loomed, but for the first time it hesitated. The humans' strategy had worked. Their knowledge of the monster, honed over generations of running and surviving, had created an opportunity. Arya's voice came over the comms. "We cannot destroy it. We can only survive. But if we move together, we can leave it behind. Follow our path and stay close. Trust us." Zadran nodded, his pride humbled. "All ships follow human lead. Survival first. Fight only if necessary." The fleet moved, weaving through the final stretch of the asteroid field. The hollow followed at the edge of sensors, massive and patient, but unable to strike at the smaller, faster ships guiding the Empire. As they emerged from the field, space opened into a calm, unbroken stretch of stars. The hollow lingered at the far edge, its massive form rolling slowly, unable to reach the fleet in time. The humans had done it. They had led the Empire and themselves out of immediate danger. The Imperial officers exhaled in relief. Ships that had trembled under the shadow of the hollow now floated safely in the quiet of open space. Soldiers who had once doubted the humans now stared in respect. The humans had saved not just themselves but the Empire. Zadran stood on the bridge of the Eternal Spear, feeling the weight of what they had just survived. For centuries, the Empire had believed itself unstoppable, and yet here in the dark reaches of the galaxy, they had discovered something stronger than fleets, weapons, or armies. They had discovered the humans' unbreakable will to survive. Arya's face appeared one last time on the main screen. Her eyes were tired, her uniform patched, but her expression carried calm determination. "You survived," she said. "Not by power, not by conquest. You survived by following our lead. Remember this, pride and strength are not always enough. Knowledge, endurance, and unity are what keep a species alive." Zadran nodded. "We have learned that lesson. The Empire will remember." Arya's lips curved into a small smile. "Good, but remember, this is only one encounter. The hollow is patient. It hunts, it waits, Always be ready. The fleet moved forward deeper into space, guided by the humans. Imperial officers whispered among themselves, realizing the magnitude of what they had witnessed. The humans were not conquerors. They were survivors, and their strength lay not in fleets or weapons but in skill, knowledge, and the courage to endure against impossible odds. Zadran thought back to the first message, repeated in countless beacons, "If you can read this, run." He understood it fully now. It was a warning, yes, but also a lesson. Sometimes running was the wisest choice. Sometimes survival was the greatest victory, and the humans had shown them both. The Empire's fleets were no longer proud and unyielding in the same way. They were cautious, aware that there were forces in the galaxy far greater than their armies. But alongside caution was newfound respect for humanity. A small scarred species had survived the hollow where empires had fallen, and now the Empire would follow their lead. Zadran looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, countless civilizations had vanished, victims of the Hollow's hunger. But humanity endured, and by following them, the Empire might endure too. As the fleet moved forward, Arya's voice came one last time. "Run when you must. Fight when you can. Survive. Always." The message echoed through the Empire's fleet. A new commandment for a galaxy that had once believed itself invincible. For the first time, Zadran smiled, not with pride but with understanding. Humanity had warned them. Humanity had led them. And humanity had taught them the greatest lesson of all. Survival is the ultimate power. The legend of humanity spread across the stars, not as conquerors, but as the species that stood, endured, and warned the galaxy. And the Hollow waited, patient, knowing that one day it would return. But the humans, and now the Empire, were ready. The end